How are you doing? This is Rule of Law. I'm going to talk about the FBI and the counterintelligence division of the FBI and all that, and talk about the history of it to show the level of corruption that uh, all the information coming out about the FBI today is just one amongst the many things that they've done in the past. The FBI has been corrupt since early 1950s or earlier. The FBI created a program called Cointelpro, which was Counterintelligence Program, the same program that is being used to this day. Its purpose was to surveil, to infiltrate, to discredit, and to disrupt domestic political organizations and individuals. Generally, they labeled them as subversives, even if they weren't subversives. Most of the times, these people were protesting, for example, the civil rights movement. Blacks and whites and other minorities came together to try and push for civil rights, equality and rights and all that, and to have them be treated equally. And what happened was Martin Luther King was trying to organize and unify and get the races together and stop the division and create equal rights for all. What happened was J. Edgar Hoover, supposedly it's stated officially in the records that Cointelpro started in 1956, but I think it was earlier. It was just not that name wasn't used. What it was is they went after Martin Luther King. They surveilled him. They infiltrated his organization. They disrupted his organization. They discredited him. They locked him up. They were involved in locking him up. The FBI was involved with local law enforcement. COINTELPRO, back then and now, works with law enforcement, local law enforcement. So there are many law enforcement agencies that you think that are honest and decent, and a lot of them, the aspects of their entities are doing illegal activity. They're involved in a COINTELPRO program. It's Donald Trump was being targeted before he ran for election. What they did is they intercepted his telecommunications with highly advanced surveillance equipment and eavesdropping equipment. What they did is intercepted his telecommunications. They wiretapped his phones. They don't really use that term anymore because they got sophisticated devices. They just go to the telephone company and get all the information, the intercepts. But when Donald Trump said that they wiretapped his telephone, it wasn't really correct because that's not they don't put alligator clips or any connectors on the copper wires. Now it's totally different. The interceptor was high-tech equipment, even with eavesdropping, listening on conversations. But Trump was right, but what happened was they were lying because what he was saying that pretty much they're intercepting his communications. He just didn't use the right words. He didn't know. And what they did is denied it. But before Donald Trump became the president, while he's running in his for the presidential campaign, and even before that, Donald Trump was being watched 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Donald Trump was under surveillance. They were intercepting his telecommunications. They were eavesdropping, listening on his conversations with high-tech surveillance equipment, bugging devices, eavesdropping equipment. So they were listening to Donald Trump's conversations on the phone or while he talked in his building. Wherever he was at, he was being monitored 24 hours a day, 365 days out of a year. And this went on continuously. And it's even when he became president, before he became president, as he was running for the campaign, they were monitoring him. And after he became president, they were monitoring him. The reason why they were monitoring him is because Donald Trump was attempting to bring back the institutions that were formerly overthrown by the deep state. The aspects of those institutions that were overthrown is called the de facto government. It's an illegitimate part of government or all of government, but mostly it's parts of the government that were overthrown, and they reinstituted a new government, but it's really the deep state. That illegitimate aspect of the government that they've overthrown is a de facto government. The legitimate aspect of our government that was created pursuant to the Constitution is called the de jure government. De jure government. Now, once they infiltrated the FBI in the deep state, compromised it. The FBI has been compromised before the 1950s with J. Edgar Hoover. They've been as corrupt as you could ever imagine. The FBI denied the existence of organized crime, or La Cosa Nostra, or our family. The reason why is that information on him, their blackmail on J. Edgar Hoover, blackmail about his sexual orientation and about his homosexuality. So what happened was they used it against him to blackmail him, and conveniently J. Edgar Hoover didn't think there was an existence of the mafia or organized crime until there was a congressional hearing with, I think, Joseph Valachi, that came out, and he stated in the congressional hearing the existence of organized crime, and that it's also a state police officer in New York noticed a bunch of cars in upstate New York, and those cars, those plates came back to known members of organized crime, of an entity, of multiple entities. So they determined that there is organized crime, but the FBI was denying it. Peter Strzok is the counterintelligence, is part of counterintelligence in the FBI. Peter Strzok is the one that is moving a lot of this nonsense, and he's part of counterintelligence. What he's doing is he's continuing obviously he's out now, but the rest of the FBI are compromised. About 95% of the FBI are compromised or corrupt, or whatever you want to call it. Now, there may be a lot of FBI agents that are nice people. They may be decent. They may be friendly to you, but they're compromised. The reason why is there may be about 10% of the FBI that is completely corrupted, that is willingly doing corrupt acts, and there's no end to what they'll do. The rest of the FBI, probably about 85% of the FBI, is willing to go along to get along. So now, if you're willing to go along to get along because you're getting a salary, you're getting a pension, and you don't want to get fired, what do? You go along. So once you start going along and you start doing corrupt acts or misconduct, that means you're a corrupt agent. There's probably about 5% of the FBI in the department that is honest. The rest of them are corrupt, at least to some degree, committing criminal acts left and right. This is why the FBI comes to people's houses when people do YouTube videos, and they start talking to them when there's no reasonable suspicion or there's no probable cause to believe that they've committed a crime. They're coming to their house to attempt to chill speech, attempt to shut the person down from speaking, from communicating. But this whole setup with Trump was planned before the election, way before the election. Hillary Clinton is everything they're saying, just about everything they're saying, 95% of what they're saying about Trump is applicable to Hillary. Hillary and the Democratic Party. The political parties, both political parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the members in Congress, most of them are compromised. It doesn't matter whether you call them Republican or Democrat. Most of them are compromised. I'm a conservative. That's my political affiliation. But I call a spade a spade. Most of the Congress and the Senate are compromised. Either they're compromised because they're blackmailed, because they got dirt on them, with sexual scandals, pedophilia, being a pedophile, stealing, falsifying their applications, or whatever else. Hillary Clinton had 900 personnel folders, copies of the folders of FBI agents. Now, the reason why she had those folders is because she was gathering information on them when she was in the State Department. And that was for the purpose of blackmailing or bribing these federal agents so they don't pursue the investigation. Comey has always been corrupt. Comey didn't just become corrupt. You just don't do extreme stuff like that. Most of the times, it's a progression that leads up to this point. Comey's been corrupt since the beginning of time. McCabe has been corrupt since the beginning of time. Peter Strzok has been corrupt. Rob Rosenstein. Rob Rosenstein is corrupt as could be. He keeps claiming in the congressional hearings that we could assure you, congressmen or senators, we're gonna do the right thing. We could assure you, he's full of it. He's a liar. Rob Rosenstein is a criminal. He's been violating the law since the beginning of time. They don't just get that way. There's a progression that leads up to that point. The FBI is a permissive environment, and the reason why the FBI agents are mad that all this is coming out is because simple as that, it's coming out. How many FBI agents have blown the whistle on the FBI if they were so concerned about the corruption in the FBI? Why didn't they blow the whistle? The FBI agents are fond of the bureau. And the reason why they're fond of the bureau is because it's prestige. They're hiding behind the facade. The fact is that the FBI has been abusing their powers since 1950s or earlier. Now, that doesn't mean the FBI hasn't done good things in addiction and narcotics or kidnapping, using their resources for criminal profiling to find kidnappers and apprehend them and arrest them and prosecute them and whatever else you want to call it. But that's their job. Their job is not to be corrupt, not to commit misconduct. The reason why they commit misconduct and they're corrupt is because they've been compromised. A woman named Edmund Sybil. She was an FBI contractor. They wanted to become an FBI agent. She didn't have enough time because she was married, she had children, and she was going to school. She exposed the whole thing. She wrote a book, Edmund Sybil. She wrote a whole book about the FBI and the corruption and the Muslim Brotherhood, how they infiltrated the FBI's I think it was counterintelligence division, where they interpreted intercepts over the phone or eavesdropping. They interpreted the intercepts from, translated from one language to the other. And what she found out is there are many people that are from the Muslim Brotherhood inside the FBI, intentionally to obstruct, to interfere, to hinder an investigation into the Muslim Brotherhood and their corrupt deeds. And she exposed it. She wrote a book. When she exposed it, the FBI went after. They kept going after and going after and going after. Not only that, I think it was a guy named Patrick Knowlton. Patrick Knowlton went into Washington, D.C. park. He went to relieve himself because he needed to use the restroom, but there was none around. So he went in the bushes inside like a forest-like area. When he went in there, a guy was staring at him with such hostility he couldn't understand. He thought as if the guy wanted to commit violence or kill him or do something to him. So he thought when he went to relieve himself, he thought that the guy was going to come up to him because originally he pulled up his car near the guy that was parked in the parking lot near the park, and he went to go relieve himself, and the guy was staring at him. So when he came back after he relieved himself, he was nervous. He thought that the guy was going to foul him and injure him or assault him, or he didn't know, because the guy was so hostile, his gestures, his actions towards him. So he finally got back to the car. The other guy was just staring at him, but didn't get out of the car. He thought something was so suspicious that what he did is he called the park's police. and he told them. And then later on in the day, he heard in the news that Vince Foster has been killed, and the body was discovered in the same area where he relieved himself. He gave it. So what he did is he called the FBI. He talked to the FBI. He told the FBI what vehicle, a description of the vehicle that he saw, in reference to the guy that was staring at him and was hostile towards him. He gave a description of the vehicle, and the FBI kept insisting that no, that couldn't have been. It had to be a silver vehicle. I think it was a silver vehicle because Vince Foster was driving a silver vehicle. He owned a silver vehicle, but it wasn't. The person that was staring at him, that was hostile towards him, had a brown Honda. And the FBI kept saying no, it was a silver vehicle. And the reason why is because the official version of the story was that Vince Foster drove to the park with his silver vehicle, went into the park and killed himself. It was allegedly it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But according to all the evidence, it was inconsistent with the forensic evidence. But anyway, what happened was Vince Foster's, they kept saying it was a silver car, the FBI. And he said, no, it wasn't. What happened was eventually the FBI gave him some paint chips, some charts, and he gave him charts to show which color, and he identified it as a Honda, an older Honda, because this was years ago. I think it was an 80-something Honda. So after he identified the vehicle, and he gave a composite sketch, the FBI didn't want to hear him. They kind of shoot him off. Later on, as things started opening up, evidence started coming out, the FBI called him back. And they said, oh, you want to testify? I want you to testify. So he said, yes, I'll testify. And he clarified everything about the car, the composite sketch, because the whole theory behind the case was Vince Foster was depressed. So Vince Foster drove to the park with his silver car and shot himself in the head. And the cause and manner of death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But the facts and the forensic evidence were totally inconsistent with him shooting himself. Patrick Knowlton, when he went back to the FBI the second time, he told the FBI about what was going on. He clarified it. So the FBI said, you probably have to testify. As soon as Patrick Knowlton got out of the FBI kept insisting that it wasn't a brown car, and he says, yes, it was. And the reason why is to be inconsistent with their theory of the case. They suicided him. Hillary Clinton had him killed. So what happened is after that, Vince Foster he went away with the anticipation of testifying. As soon as he left the FBI's office, I think it was in Washington, D.C., people were following him around. And then as he was walking, people were following him. They were walking up to him, walking into him, elbowing him. They kept staring at him. They were hostile. As he was walking, they continued to follow him, different people. He walked the one way, and all of a sudden there was no people. Now he was walking, and then all of a sudden there was people. And they kept staring at him and staring at him, making it obvious that they were following him, that he was a target. What effectively became, from the Cointelpro program, is a targeted individual. It's called a targeted individual. They call it gang stalking. It really should be authorized government stalking. Authorized government stalking. But the term they use is gang stalking. And the reason why it's a gang of people that come together to stalk, harass, alarm, annoy, disrupt you, trying to cause trauma, psychological trauma to you. So anyway, what happened was he was walking. As he continued to walk, people came out from nowhere, anywhere around, and they kept following him and following him. And they were hostile, really hostile. And he stated that he thought he was having an out-of-body experience. He thought he was imagining this. So what happened was, as he was walking, he went to pick up his girlfriend. He was walking, he was on foot. He went to wherever his girlfriend was at the time. She walked outside with him, and he was walking. He didn't tell the girlfriend about what was happening because he thought he was imagining it. All of a sudden, the girlfriend noticed something, that all these people were following him. So she asked him, "What's going on?" And then he kind of said, "Well, what are you talking about?" Because he was denying it to himself that the government and the FBI could be that corrupt, along with local law enforcement that was involved. So anyway, what happened was he went home. When he went home, the car, the same exact car, I'm not the same type of car. I think it was an '84 Honda Accord. I don't remember, or a Civic, but the same car that he identified as the individual that was acting hostile towards him, that was parked in the parking space next to the park area where he relieved himself, uh, where Vince Foster's body was found. That car was at his house. So he didn't have the presence of mind to go get a photo to photograph the car. And then, but it wasn't the same car. It was how would you say it? It's the same type of car, the same model, make, and year, but it was a different car. But it was the same color and everything. So as he was driving on the road now, later on, he saw multiple cars of the same color following behind him, around him, and anywhere else that he was driving. This is the COINTEL program that the FBI has created, and that's to disrupt you psychologically, to make you out to be crazy. And this is the same thing they're using on Trump. Uh, Trump is being monitored everywhere he goes, even today. This investigation is a farce. It's fraudulent. Uh, it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. There's no particularized information about a crime or anything. What they're doing is just investigating the person and not investigating the acts that they're not saying, okay, this person is a reason to believe that they've committed a crime, so we're investigating that particular cluster of actions or behaviors that possibly would indicate a crime because we have reasonable suspicion or probable cause. No, that's not what it is. They're investigating Donald Trump. Donald Trump, just because he's Donald Trump and his ideologies makes him a crime. He's a crime to the FBI because the FBI is so corrupt that they don't want him to continue to implement the policies of what the American people want. What the American people want is they want a counter revolution. A counter revolution is not a revolution. It's to bring back the institutions of America that were overthrown by the deep state or the shadow government. That means draining the swamp. If you drain the whole swamp, the problem is there are many people inside the White House. There are many people in government agencies all over that infiltrated all these agencies in government, and they want to go after them. The people that you least expect are his enemies. Even the Republicans, the senators, the congressmen, are his enemies. They've been bribed. They've been blackmailed. They got evidence on them. A lot of them are involved with Jerry Epstein's island and pedophilia and raping of women and all sorts of stuff. There's evidence against them. They got video on them. So if a congressman that's a conservative and they want to promote gay rights, they go to the congressman, and congressman doesn't want to promote it. They go to him and they say, okay, look, Congressman, we have to show you something. They show him his video of him and being involved with some illegal conduct or activity or being involved with pedophilia or something else. And then the congressman all of a sudden goes the opposite way. He votes for gay rights. Or they'll take a person that is a Democrat, a very leftist Democrat, and they could show him a video. And then all of a sudden they could make him flip and then make legislation against gay rights. If they so choose. This is how the whole system works. The whole system is compromised. There's a small number of people in the system that are not compromised. The problem is, even those that are in the system that want to do the right thing can't do the right thing because they'll be persecuted. The government is inside the government. There's no mechanisms to blow the whistle in the federal government to expose the corruption because you'll be blackmailed. COINTEL program. This COINTEL program is involved with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies that literally monitor people 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to harass people, to alarm them, to disrupt them. They're involved with infraguard and data infusion centers. The FBI has fusion centers all across America. Those fusion centers are used to gather intelligence. The reason why it's counterintelligence, they're trying to counter what you're doing. They're trying to gather intelligence on you to counter what you're doing. You're not doing anything wrong. If you are, they could just arrest you with a legitimate arrest because of probable cause. But since you're not doing anything wrong, they need to gather counterintelligence on you. That counterintelligence will be used to disrupt you, to disrupt your relationship with your family, with your friends, and the community. And this is what they're doing with Trump. They're dividing Trump. The Inspector General of the FBI is corrupt. They do not put honest people in as the Inspector General. He is corrupt as could be. If he was, and same with Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions was a conservative senator, but he is compromised. As soon as Jeff Sessions got in, got in as DOJ in DOJ as the Attorney General, and he didn't initiate an investigation upon a complaint or evidence, overwhelming evidence about Hurley and Uranium-1. I knew he was corrupt right away because that's not what an investigator does. An investigator initiates an investigation upon a complaint or is upon his own initiative if he has evidence or reason to believe a crime or multiple crimes have been committed. Hillary has committed so many crimes that she could be locked up for the rest of her life, and same with probably 90% of the DNC. I'm not saying also even the Republican Party has a lot of stuff going on as well. But the thing is that they're protecting. The FBI is infiltrated by the deep state. The FBI is involved with Cointelpro, and even in I think it's 1978, they had the Church Commission. The Church Commission implicated the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA for harassing, being involved in a Cointel program. They were harassing people. They were harassing protesters. When Martin Luther King was going against he was protesting against war, the Vietnam War. They went after him. They went after anybody else that was involved in protesting against the Vietnam War. They tried to say Martin Luther King was a communist and this and that. They tried to come up with anything they could to disrupt him. They didn't care if he was or he wasn't. The idea is to tarnish him. What the FBI did not want is they did not want blacks and whites to unify together and have unity. Because if they did, then the people would come together and attempt to gain control of their government. If they attempted to gain control of their government, then the deep state would have to be exposed. The deep state is they had to overthrow our government. The deep state is revolutionary in nature. The deep state are the Bolsheviks from 1817. Those are the same mindset of these people. These people are revolutionary. With a revolution, with somebody that advocates a revolution, is to overthrow all the institutions in America. Now, the reason why they're advocating it is because in order to transform this nation into a new world order, a one world order, you must overwhelm the system. You must take capitalism. Instead of make it moderate capitalism like the 50s, which worked very well, you allow violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act, restrain of trade, you rig everything. You rig the tax structure and everything else, the IRS code. So the rich get richer and richer and richer, where it's not warranted because if, for example, if the rich have a corporation and they get permits to dump in the river, in the water, they're paying for permits, but the amount for the permits is relatively nothing relative to the cleanup cost, because it becomes a Superfund site. Then what effectively you're doing is you have socialism for the rich. Now, I don't recommend socialism for the rich or for the poor, unless it's just a general socialism. General socialist programs, like, for example, pure water, pure and clean water, the Postal Service, U.S. military, the defense, for all of us, basic stuff. But I don't recommend. I don't believe that socialism does not work. Socialism for the rich or socialism for the poor does not work. What we need to do is we need to tax everybody proportionally in a fair amount. The thing is that these corporations become so powerful that what they do is they pay off and bribe all the politicians. They call campaign contributions, and this is why these corporations, these big giant corporations, are trying to overthrow. What the objective here is to stymie Donald Trump, is to constantly ensnare to get him involved in an investigation, one after another, so he can't do what he's supposed to do. The policies that he promised to implement, they're disrupting him. They're infiltrating his organization, his entity. They're doing so many things because they don't want that wall up. That wall should be up. And it has nothing to do. That wall has nothing to do with being racist. Mexico has its own wall. That doesn't mean Mexico against whites, blacks, Hispanics, non-Mexicans. What it means is that they want to have sovereignty. They want to exercise sovereignty over their nation and who comes in. America is the same way. We're a melting pot with all different races. We have Asians, we have black people, white people. We have all sorts of races here in this nation, and when it's not being racist to build a wall. We need for our minorities to have better jobs, even whites to have better jobs, and we can't allow other people that come overseas just because they feel like it, not honor our laws, honor our way of life, take all our jobs away. We must have jobs for our people. That means all races in our country. So it's nothing to do with racism. What we need to do is exercise sovereignty over our nation. Our nation is a sovereign nation. If we open the borders and allow anybody to come and go as if they were just going from one part of the United States to the other, effectively what they do is they destroy the sovereignty of a nation. And what happens is that nation now is falls. That nation will fall. And what happens is the objective is the New World Order's objective with Soros and the other deep state people is to overthrow America and overthrow countries of the world to get rid of nationalism. Mexico's nationalism, the emphasis of their country or our country or anybody else's, they want to undermine that. And the reason why they want to undermine that is in order to implement the New World Order, you must have a unified ideology. And the ideology must hollow out all cultures of the world. All cultures of the world that are inconsistent with the making of a global order must be hollowed out. What you need to do is, what they're doing is they're overshadowing. This is an ideological war. This is a war of ideologies between good and evil. It's a spiritual warfare. This is a spiritual warfare, and what it is this ideology, the ideology that's propagated, if an ideology that's propagated takes root in the hearts and minds of men and women, and they believe it, it'll either keep the system or the culture the way it is, preserve customs, traditions, practices, laws, rules, regulations that are existing, if the ideology is consistent with that. If that ideology is inconsistent with rules, regulations, traditions, the Constitution, our culture, our way of life, and the people, it takes root in the hearts and minds of men and women in this country, and they believe there's a need for change, then what happens is it's going to transform this country. Once you take the underpinnings of this country, the culture is the underpinnings of our country, what we stand for, what our country is, and what the Constitution is. Once you take ideology that's totally inconsistent with it, what effectively they're doing is they're trying to overthrow, they're trying to sow the seeds of a coup d'etat, a silent revolution from an ideological war. So anybody like me that is a conservative that speaks up, they're going to try and label you as a racist. They're going to try and label you as violent. They're going to try and label you as irrational, as having a psychological abnormality, as mentally defective, whatever it is that they have to do to shut you down. But the bottom line is that the deep state is propagating this new hate speech legislation. They're propagating it because they can't allow the ideologies that promote and protect these underpinnings of the U.S. Constitution and the American way of life to prevail. So any ideology that is inconsistent with the underpinnings of our country, the foundation of our country, the ideology, the common law, the common practices, policies, procedures, they must overthrow this ideology. This is why our school system is nothing but a brainwashing from grade school up to high school to college. Most of it is brainwashing. I went to college, and I know I was thrown out twice because they were politically intolerant of free speech pertaining to being conservative. I filed a federal lawsuit twice and was reinstated. These people are the most politically intolerant of free speech. Most teachers, I'm not saying all, most teachers tend to be liberal. Now, why is that? Because when you take the test to become a teacher, if you're not a liberal and you don't tell them what they want to hear on the test, you will not pass it. My friend is a conservative, and he is a teacher. But before he became a teacher, he took the teacher certification, the test. Everything he believed, he said the opposite on the test. And the reason why is because they want a permissive environment. They want liberalism. They want people to discover their heart, to emphasize emotions over reasoning, to emphasize authority over truth. The truth should have the authority and not the authority to truth. We must respect authority and follow authority. But the bottom line is those in authority, when they're not speaking the truth, people should yield to the truth. These teachers have been indoctrinated into Marxist, communist ideology, most of them. The small number that are conservatives cannot express their viewpoints because they will be persecuted. So what I'm trying to say is that this whole program with Donald Trump needs to fire these Rod Rosenstein. He needs to fire the Attorney General Sessions because he's corrupt. If you're going to allow somebody in law enforcement to continue to investigate you, they can make up anything they want. It's not what you did. It's what they say you did that matters. If they say you did crimes A, B, and C, and they could articulate their theory of the case when they go to prosecute you, and you don't have enough proof you literally have to prove your innocence. If you don't, you're not innocent till proven guilty. You're guilty to proven innocent when you have a Cointelpro program operating and they drag you into court. They allege false allegations against you and drag you into court. The bottom line is that Trump needs to be careful what he says wherever he goes because they're watching him by satellite. They're watching him by surveillance equipment, high-tech equipment. They're watching him everywhere. Everywhere he goes, he's being followed. Trump and his associates are being followed. They're being monitored everywhere. And the reason why is because they're trying to undermine the president. Trump is doing a great job. Trump is trying to bring back the Constitution. Trump is trying to bring back the country, to bring back the economy. Trump's tariffs are a great idea. People may not like it because their industry is affected, but too bad. This is about the American people. This isn't just about the money interest in America. It's about the American people, the little people. The bottom line is it's not about being against corporations or anything else. What it is it's being for both. You cannot keep globalizing this country because you're destroying this country. If we can have a manufacturing sector in this economy that is self-sufficient, if we should ever go to war, to be able to build components for war machines and equipment and guns and whatever else we need to defend ourselves, our national security is at stake. We need to have steel manufacturing brought back to America and any other major heavy industry manufacturing brought back to America. We cannot privatize. We cannot. We cannot contract it out. If we contract it out to overseas, We risk our national sovereignty. Our national sovereignty is also based on our ability to manufacture products and become goods and services and become self-sufficient. So if we ever do have a war, that we could defend ourselves. So the ultimate thing is that be wary. Cointelpro, which is a counterintelligence program of the FBI, is still alive and they're still out there. Cointelpro monitors people 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. Those that are whistleblowers in the government, or even not in the government, those that expose corruption. It could even be somebody that is exposing corruption in local law enforcement or anywhere in government. If the local law enforcement puts you on the terrorist watch list or another watch list, the FBI, along with the local law enforcement agencies that happen, those that are corrupt, will be monitoring you 24 hours a day. They'll be following you around in their marked units, unmarked units. They'll have other individuals from fire departments, from ambulance companies, EMS, EMT workers. They will have people that they pay on the payroll. The government will pay people to follow anybody that they target as a COINTEL program. They'll pay them 62, I think it's 62 to about 82,000. It's called GS 12. It's a salary scale. They'll pay them a large sum of money to go monitor people, go around, and they'll pay them. So Trump is being monitored by the federal government 24 hours a day with employees of the FBI and other entities and law enforcement that are being paid to specifically monitor Trump everywhere he goes and his associates. Also, anybody else that blows the whistle, that goes on this watch list, is monitored 24 hours a day. Cars will follow them around. Cars will put their brights on. They'll put their four-ways on. Anything to communicate to you, we're watching you. But with such subtlety that the average public will not know that they're watching you. And also what they'll do is disrupt you any way they could, interfere with your daily activity. And this is the objective, because what it is they're so fearful of people that articulate themselves, that are whistleblowers, that the government will spend unlimited resources. One person said to me about fighting the war in Iraq, and they said, George Bush, I think, was saying, we'll fight this war at all costs. And I said to the person, you're in agreement with it? And he says, yes. I said, are you willing to give up your house and everything you own? He says, don't be ridiculous. I said, well, at all costs means that. What it means is they'll run the presses until your dollar's devalued to such a degree where you can't afford to own a house. The house that you own right now, you'll have to give it up because you can't afford it. They'll weaken the dollar and they'll weaken the standard of living to such a degree where there'll be no living, no standard of living. And it's not that I'm against a war. I'm against war for oil. I'm against war if it's not necessary. If the war is specifically to defend our country against attack, I will go to war and defend this country to my death. But I will not defend this country for oil. I will not defend this country because it's not this country. It's the globalist. It's the oligarch. I will not defend the oligarch so they could go overseas, rip off all the resources all around the world. For example, Afghanistan. They went in Afghanistan. What did they go in there for? They went in there to rip off all the heroin. Now we get a heroin epidemic, right? They went in there. There's opiate derivatives all over the place, sold throughout the United States. They went in there and they stole it all. The American government is involved in shipping narcotics back to the United States to fund illegal wars and illegal operations, black ops. Another thing is with COINTEL too. Part of COINTEL is that they'll fly black helicopters around people's houses. Not everybody, but certain people. So when the person says, oh, look, there's a black helicopter, or they tell people there's a black helicopter, this going on, they're made out to be crazy. They'll do stuff that is so unique that when they tell anybody that they associate with, their friends, family members, or associates, the associates or friends, family member could not imagine that happening. So when they tell them, they just paint them out to be crazy or nuts or whatever else. But this is part of COINTEL to disrupt. Look up 1978, I think it is, the Church Commission. The intelligence agencies are working together with the FBI still. Donald Trump has got to be very careful. Donald Trump should not say anything to the FBI. Donald Trump should fire Rod Rosenstein, fire Sessions, and not testify, not make any statements at all, under oath or not under oath, to the FBI. Donald Trump should be very careful what he says publicly. His lawyer, too, should be very careful. Shouldn't say much. And the reason why is because they'll twist what he says and then says he lied, even though he didn't. Lying is when you intentionally misrepresent. If you made a statement and your statement is inconsistent with the previous statement, but there was no intent to mislead or deceive, it's not lying. It's just a memory loss. But what the FBI does, and they get the capacity to do, they'll say you lied, and then they'll prosecute you for lying anyway because they're that corrupt. That's why the FBI comes to people's houses and they ask them, "Oh, we just want to know about your videos and all." Well, why do you want to know about the people's videos on YouTube or anywhere else? The reason why is they're attempting to chill speech. Those FBI agents that come to the house are corrupt because there's no reason to believe. Nobody made any statements that warrant any interview or interrogation by federal law enforcement or local law enforcement. This is Rule of Law News. I went on a little bit, but I just want to give an overview. I'll elaborate further on the programs and all that, what goes on. Okay, take care. This is Rule of Law News.